Hello, my name is Jim Gurman, and welcome to today's episode of
Kilimanjaro.
Today we're going to be taking a look at different wood finishes. So these specifically are all clear coats meant to go over top of stain or bare wood or paint. They're all water-based, and they're all generally meant to be sprayed, although you could probably brush them on. They're all made by a company called Target Coatings, and they make a number of different products here, and their website isn't particularly clear about the differences between them, so I'd like to test them with some common solvents and other staining things that you might find in the kitchen or in the bathroom to see how well they hold up. If you might have guessed, the purpose of this is I'm building a kitchen and I want to figure out what the best one of these is to put on my kitchen cabinets. So over here we've got the EM2000. They call this a varnish. This is the 6000, which they call a lacquer. We've got the 8000 here, which is conversion varnish, and the 9000, which they call a polyurethane. Finally, the 9300, which is a polycarbonate. Now this one's a little different in that it's meant for exterior use, although I've used it for interior projects too and had no problems with that as well. So what I did here is I applied a strip of each one of these. I put 3 coats of each one over a white board. The white is actually the 6000 that's been tinted white, but these are each on top of that. So there's 3 coats in each column of each of them. Now the only visual difference between them is the 2000 and the 8000 have a little bit of yellow in them, which if you were going to put it over white like this, you wouldn't want. But if you're putting it over a stained project, like my kitchen cabinets will be, it doesn't matter at all. If it's a fairly dark stain, you won't see it at all. Even if it's a pretty light stain, it probably won't matter, and it may actually enhance the color of the wood a little bit. So I painted this up a year ago, maybe even a little bit more, so this is all fully cured. You can see the Target Coatings has actually changed their label style. This is the new label style. This is what they used to look like, but as far as I know, the product is completely the same. So you may ask why I'm focusing on this one company. This just happens to be what I was easily able to get. I'd also like to take a look in the future at some general finishes, but figured I'd start with this stuff. There we go, I got all my solvents, chemicals, whatever you want to call it on here. You can tell I had a little difficulty. I should have put that acetone in a smaller container. And this acetone evaporates so quickly, I had a very hard time getting it to, putting it down before I could put the food coloring in. So what I did was I put a little Sharpie on there. The acetone dissolves the Sharpie, so that may get embedded in the finish here. I can already tell that I think the acetone has affected all 5 of these different finishes. Yeah, it looks like it's bubbling up a little bit on each one of them. We'll leave it sit, see what happens overnight. Once the acetone evaporates, the film may recover after that's all done. I would suspect, though, that the colorant is going to get in there. That's a pretty harsh test, but acetone is the main ingredient in nail polish remover. So, you know, somebody could take some nail polish off and then leave that acetone-soaked rag somewhere. I'll set up a time lapse and we can see how this goes overnight. It's the next morning. All of these have dried, as if you had a party and nobody remembered to clean it up until the next morning. So I did realize last night, I have no way to clean off the Sharpie. Sharpies are supposed to be permanent markers, so there's no way to actually get that off. So that probably wasn't the best test. I'll try and wipe it off with some water. There is some parts around it where I got some acetone before I put the Sharpie on, so we'll see if that comes off. But I'm just going to take some just plain water and a little bit of just hand soap and see if I can wipe off the rest of this and see what the different finishes look like. So I've got these all cleaned off as best I could. It looks like everything stained them all completely, but the film held up pretty well in most of the situation. So I was surprised the toilet bowl cleaner had no effect on any of them. It doesn't seem to have bothered them at all. I would have thought that that would have been one of the more damaging ones. The acetone seems to have affected all of them. Like I said, there's actually no way to get a Sharpie off without using more acetone, so that's not overly surprising that I couldn't get the ink off. But the 2000 and the 9300 have only a little bit of roughening to the film of the coating, but all three of these middle ones, the 6000, the 8000, and the 9000, were all pretty badly damaged by the acetone. The film looks fine on all of them, so that's great. The hand sanitizer, the alcohol, what looks like happened is on these three in the middle, where I stirred it, I let it sit for a little bit and I stirred the food coloring in, where the piece of wood rubbed into the finish, that actually damaged it here, and maybe here, and certainly here. So if you ever get alcohol on one of these finishes, just let it sit and evaporate. Don't try to rub it out. Rubbing it out will actually wreck the finish. These two don't seem like they were affected. The 2000 and the 9300 don't seem like they were affected. The ketchup had no effect. I was a little surprised about that. Ketchup is pretty acidic. The mustard didn't have any effect to the film, but it did stain. Mustard is pretty staining, so don't let mustard sit on your cabinets because it will stain. So end result is they all perform pretty similarly. It does seem like the 9300 and the 2000 perform a little bit better, but all of them get stained by heavy coats of food coloring and mustard, and obviously a Sharpie is permanent on all of them, and the acetone hurts them all pretty badly. I'm a little surprised by how badly the acetone affected almost all of these finishes. So I'm wondering if one of the reasons why is the white that's underneath here. The white is actually the EM6500, which is the 6000 that's been tinted white. So I'm wondering if the acetone penetrated through and then reacted with the 6500 that's underneath here. So on the back side here, I've got same thing, all the different finishes, just over a plain piece of wood, no finish underneath it. I was going to put just the acetone and the alcohol on top of that just to see if there's any difference when they're just over bare wood as opposed to over the white tinted lacquer. So let's put some alcohol over it. I'm going to go pour some acetone. So the reason I did the white to begin with was I thought it would be a little easier to see. So with this, it's going to be pretty hard to see what the damage is, so you'll just have to trust me on how much damage it's doing. I've got it tilted a little, that's why if you can see that it's running down. So give that a minute for the acetone to flash off, and then I'm just going to clean off the alcohol, see what happens. I went and had some breakfast, let these sit for a couple minutes, and now I'm just going to wipe off what's left of the hand sanitizer. The acetone's all flashed off. So you may still be able to see a couple of spots from the hand sanitizer, but I don't think it has affected the film. I think it may have just penetrated a little, so I think eventually that'll clear up. I think that's true on all of these, that it hasn't really affected them. The acetone, you probably can't tell. I can only tell when looking at an angle. The 6000 definitely, I would say it damaged it. And the 8000 too. The other four, though, look like they were alright. Or the other three look like they were alright. So I think it was just the issue of having the 6500 white underneath it that actually caused those to have failures on the other side. So it looks like the 6000 is probably the least durable. It's affected by the acetone, but if you're going to use it for kitchen cabinets, that's probably not a big deal. The alcohol doesn't seem to have affected anything, and the food coloring and the mustard, they stain all of them, so there's nothing you can do about that. I do know, I'll probably do a later video where I compare it to some other things. Your typical polyurethane, oil-based polyurethane, I know that doesn't have any problem with acetone or alcohol, so that's also a good solution, but it is oil-based, which is a pain to deal with.